Join Dr. Shirley Canniff and her colleagues from the Tuft School of Medicine in Boston as she explores the Joshua connection.
So her capstone is entitled Exploring the Joshua Connection, a proposal for a faith-based set of interventions to strengthen African American and other socioeconomically disparaged families suffering from trauma.
And I just thank you, Olivia, for that introduction. I thank you for all for taking the time in your busy schedules to come to this presentation. It means a lot. Okay, so the rest of this, we're going to emphasize utilizing the NADA protocol, the TCM organ time clock, and other integrative methods for the healing and restoration of the family. All right, so the inspiration behind the Joshua connection is my son Joshua, and I'm going to give him a few lines to speak about what this means to him in my voice. Let me introduce myself to you. I am Joshua Francis Emery Moore, son of my mom, Dr. Shirley Moore Canniff. I come from a multi-ethnic background with African American roots. I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. In 2014, upon the production of this PowerPoint presentation of my life, I was 22 years old. Now I am currently 29. I was born on January 25th, 1992, and this is my story, the portrait of me, Joshua. These are the petals of my life. I want to continue to tell my story through the creative means available to me that I'm allowed to express wherever I am in the world through my circle of support, involving my family and friends. My achievements may be limited, but when they are allowed to be expressed in a quiet environment that is not chaotic in nature, an environment that I can thrive in and be with people that I can tolerate and who love me for who I am the most, many will be pleased about what I am capable of doing. Art and building things with my hands is among the many activities that I currently enjoy. These are one of my accomplishments, a high school diploma. My vision and my focus is to reach farther than what is expected for someone who is nonverbal with autism like me. Just give me an hour and I will show you the petals of my flower, but it's not going to take an hour for this presentation. Okay, so the hallmark of this capstone, this is where we are. There's 3 points I want to make. The Joshua connection builds upon the caretaking experience of my son, Joshua, and the creation of the initial Joshua connection. The Joshua connection builds upon my acquired knowledge and skills as a chaplain and as an acupuncturist. It also builds upon my lifelong learning, understanding, and knowledge of the biological, psychological, social, and spiritual aspects of pain presented in the Masters of Science in Pain Research, Education, and Policy program here at Tufts University School of Medicine. And I have Dr. Carr to thank for this. Okay, the problems are focused on the Joshua connection. I'm going to be brief about this. It's exploring the nature and intergenerational history of family trauma that is unique to the particular family system of the African American family. Also, exploring what makes the Joshua connection a viable faith-based healing set of interventions for African American and disenfranchised families currently undergoing life's challenges. Also, the problem focus areas of the Joshua connection would be in exploring, evaluating, and modifying the existing support network structure of the family, exploring and locating key players and role models in the family's current circle of support. Also exploring the adaptability on how the Joshua Connection's approach to self-care can contribute to family wellness. Exploring and drafting a viable Joshua Connection family action peace plan that is unique and specific to each family in the network is another way that we will explore the problem focus areas. Also exploring and addressing the level of spiritual pain associated with the current traumatic experience within the family structure that happens over and over again, therefore becoming chronic in nature. Also exploring unique opportunities and presenting the big picture of the blooming flower of Joshua's petals in hopes of building back a better family resiliency, structure, and narrative that's right for the family. in need. So we begin by our approach to this is a method called pedal building. And I always begin any of my mission and vision because of much prayer and meditation with let the greatest need be the need to help others. But here we apply it to the Joshua connection as this. Let the greatest need be the need to help out families to heal with self-care integrative interventions set forth by the Joshua Connection and the NADA protocol in hopes of aiding African American families and other disparaged families towards healing and restoration through the dynamics we call pedal building, which is also the method. Calling the family towards a greater sense of moral accountability within the family structure in pedal building is what we will hope to achieve. And also assisting and empowering the family to rediscover the family narrative one family at a time through exploring and identifying the current psychosocial spiritual dynamic of the family, which is a multimodal approach, will further assist the Joshua Connection, encourage the family rewriting the family narrative. And we will be following the growth of this as time goes on for these families through the Joshua Connection psychosocial spiritual developmental stage model for families. Okay, so as I was preparing for these slides, we actually have 12 problem areas that we identified, but for the sake of this presentation, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 areas that we want to focus on for this presentation. The top part up here, you'll see the trauma that we look at the trauma-based problem through the intake process, and the method we use is pedal building, followed by a set of self-care interventions that would also be followed up by a faith-based narrative coach. And then family and or individual, is it family, is it individual, is it extended family or the mentor family that's helping the individuals, but it's a team approach and person-centered at the same time. And provider, there's a team approach, like I said earlier, which will also consist of the provider, could be an ND, a naturopathic doctor with acupuncture training. It could be a licensed acupuncturist, and other, other specialists like an MD with acupuncture training. Okay, it could be all of those and wrapped up into one, along with somebody in pastoral services, preferably a chaplain, because they can deal with the grief, in case of premature death, like as in COVID-19, where the grief, happens sooner rather than later. And then the assessment tools, we will use this we will use this probably in tandem with identifying the trauma-based problem in the beginning stages of the intake process. Okay, so we see these concentric circles, and up on the first quadrant, we looked at, like I said, there were 12 areas of 12 areas of problem focus that we could, we felt we would probably see from time to time. But for the sake of this presentation, there are 3 specific members of the team that are pretty consistent, at least 5 specific and important problem areas. And that is the community of faith, a member of that, which is a chaplain and or pastoral associate, or someone trained in ministry, or all 3. And then there's the health and wellness, and then the mentor families, which are like extended families for the families that need mentoring the most. So these problem areas are about 4 or 5 problem areas that we are looking at. The first one is the family has no action peace plan when these crises come up. They have more of a faulty one, and we're there to help strengthen that family action peace plan. Also, spiritual pain area and grief. And then the problem area, psychological and emotional pain. Another problem area, substance misuse, or it could be somebody has some mental health challenges and they are misusing the substances by not taking the right ones, or the right medication becomes all of a sudden wrong for them and they have to change up. Also, problem area here, the last one in this schema is the inadequate problem solving skills, which is really huge, especially in the area where there's a lot of substance misuse and also various forms of abuse as well. Okay, so the basis for the Joshua connection comes from four theories of uh, three personality theorists, and also the family systems theorist, who seems to be one of a kind, established in 1950 by Dr. Murray Bowen. And his work was all about the 8 interlocking concepts of family systems theory. And I have at the end of these PowerPoint an actual link, so you can go to his site. He offers CEUs and everything for families, for people who want to work with families, and that can be from professionals to postgraduate to people in ministry. It's awesome. Okay, and then the second theorist is Abraham Maslow's 5-stage theory of hierarchy of needs, was developed in the 1940s by Abraham Maslow and adapted to this time period. And then Erik Erikson's 8-stage theory of psychosocial development was developed in 1950s, and Lawrence Kohlberg's 6th stage of moral development was developed in 1958.
Hey, Shirley, I think you muted yourself by accident. Shirley, I think you muted yourself by accident.
Okay, wow. All right.
That was
Well,
actually, Shirley, my fault.
okay. Well, I hope I can get a little bit more time that I lost, but that's okay. We'll wing it. Okay, so I'm going to do my laser pointer. All right, so, and let's go to the next slide. Thank you for somebody telling me that. Okay, so we're going to take the last set of those, or the last PowerPoint, the three personality theorists that actually, is based, it's provided a lot of content and a lot of thinking, a lot of analysis for the Joshua connection and why it's important. They are very important. Okay, so Abraham Maslow's new hierarchy of needs, it's very pertinent to this time that we are living in. The physiological is the bottom base, food, water, rest, and housing, as Libby pointed out, and also safety, the need for security, and the need for love and belonging to a society that accepts a person or a group of people, like in the African American family and or disparaged families that are operating a little or no hope. And it really defines intimate relationships and friends. Okay. And then esteem, feeling of accomplishment, and then self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, and self-transcendence. This is a lot of the mind-body work, and that's why it's so important and so essential in the Joshua, with these families in the Joshua connection, because it will provide a sense of meaning, especially when the family rewrites their narrative through journaling and prayer. Okay, so now we have Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory of development, naming the conflict. I'm not going to go through all these one by one, but I will give an example of what happens when a person stays stuck in the first stage. Let's take the stage of infancy, 0 to 1 years old. Trust versus mistrust. And unresolved conflict in the parental bond will result in mistrust. And if there's no particular, it depends on what's going on in the family. If there's no intervention, it could trickle down to toddler, preschooler, elementary school, adolescents, and the crisis will just keep building up and building up and building up, until late adulthood, despair, like what's the meaning of my life? So it's very important that we really, I don't want to say rescue these families that's so codependent, but we really want to intervene when the family's young, right? Okay, so the Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral development is the gradual development of an individual's concept of right or wrong, conscience, religious values, social attitudes, and certain behavior. It all begins with the family. And we have 3 levels: pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional. But at these other levels, most families have a reward and punishment system, and good, by the time stage 3 happens, people will know about how to be a good boy or good girl. But up in here for the African American families and or disparaged families, especially ones that seem to be victimized by the law, there's a sense of injustice and non-acceptance. There's not so much loyalty to the law. There's not even trust in the law, and then the justice and the spirit of the law. All this gets skewed, and this is where where we will be doing most of the work through the moral dilemma simulated episodes, where you would bring in a situation that they are that they've oftentimes responded to, and then you come up with another video through YouTube videos of the right way or the right thing, and you do a whole bunch of things like rehearsal and role playing. So that's going to be fun. All right, so the universal moral reason question in any given situation, right? You got two views: a world view, which is a broad perspective. What would you do in a given situation? Kind of stumps a lot of people who are not developed in the area of moral reasoning, but also, and then from a faith-based Christian perspective, a lot of Christians who work in this area, what would Jesus do? Okay, so the chaplain would be working more closely in this arena right here. Okay, so there are four targeted trauma areas of wellness intervention for the Joshua Connection. We talked about it in the preceding slides: spiritual trauma, psychological trauma, physical trauma, and socioeconomic trauma. So if there's a death in the family, that doesn't, it's happening to a young person because they're come from an African American family, and at a traffic stop, they get shot, and and the thing is, the whole family goes into spiritual pain and grief, but also it's coupled with psychological trauma, and the trauma, if the physical trauma is obviously the physical pain that they receive, or the death experience. But let's just stay on the topic of physical pain. If they're head of a household, like I've witnessed in some of the news media, that they're the breadwinner, and if they get have a mistaken identity and they're shot and they end up in the hospital and lose their ability to walk and to work, it brings the family right into socioeconomic trauma. And so we want to be able to support these families with the right mechanisms, the coping mechanisms of self-care. Okay, so the Joshua Connection, there's a triad up here, and I can't even see this up here, but well, let me just see about my arrow here. I'm just moving this up so you can see. I'm just going to move it over here. Yeah, okay. So that area is we looked upon the post-trauma, because everybody is, I feel that the post-traumatic PTSD is a misused term that covers a lot of area of the trauma, but there are actually different components to this. And over time, if PTSD is not dealt with and persists over time in the area, in worry, anxiety, and depression, what happens is that other things happen, either extreme breakdown or dissociation, or if there's some kind of mechanism in place where even though it's faulty, a coping skill, PTSD could be lurking in the background, and then the offshoots of that is PTED, which is post-traumatic embitterment disorder. It affects the second generation, according to the research of Lehner and Yehuda, and also post-traumatic stress syndrome in the African American community. Post-traumatic slave syndrome, the work of Dr. Joy DeGruy, and this is really what's affecting a lot of African Americans, just because of the structural racism that's so much part of our institutions. And then the persistent environmental stress disorder, the homeless, also, it can also affect African Americans, because persistent environmental stress disorder could be where you live, the high crime areas. It could be, somebody that's been persistent in homelessness for a long time, and then they're pretty much victimized with the environment that they live and the elements too. So let's continue on. So our first first family development assessment tool that the Joshua Connection actually developed is the Joshua Connection psychosocial spiritual stage model of family development. Okay, and it's the reason why it's a DNA structure is because it was the only one that kind of helped me understand the dynamics, the spiral dynamics of growth. The bottom stage here is actually the highest stage. It's the stage that supports the family, the spiritual dynamic of the family. If that's on the bottom instead of the top, because it holds everything together. It's the glue that holds the family together. And many African American people get a lot of this faith sustenance and faith growth in the churches, okay? Some more than others. And so I want to look at these boxes individually as it pertains to this DNA structure. And St. Teresa of Avila, who's a saint of the Catholic Church, has always said in spiritual growth, it's a spiral. And the closest I came to this was the DNA structure. So anyways, we want to start with stage 1. I rule my family. Stage 2, my family rules me. Remember the I's and the my's. And that is pretty much the beginning of the psychosocial dynamic of the family. And stage 3, the we are the family affect other families. And stage 4, our family honors and keeps the rules of society. And stage 5, our vote as a family can change society. That's all in the middle structure. And, every family has this to some degree, but it's pretty weak in disparaged families, especially in the African American family, where there's a lack of significance. They don't feel like they belong to much of the society that's pretty much oppressed them for over 400 years. So, and then the stage 6 and 7, all persons in the family are created equal under Creator. Stage 7, all persons in the family have a destiny to fulfill in their life to help mankind. And we always go back and forth. We always visit these, but we want to move the family from an I presentation to a we presentation, and then so they can feel a little bit more comfortable and they get strengthened in the spiritual dynamic through the chaplain, through the relationship they have with the chaplain. So we want to introduce in this sector, in the psychosocial dynamic of the family, the N+1 moral developmental variable. The +1 is whatever you can do to get them, from the I to the we, and obviously that's the moral dilemmas and role playing. Also, the psychosocial developmental variable, just calling it for what it is, how do we bring that in? Usually there's probably ongoing pastoral counseling as well. That's what the chaplain can also do. And then the SP, the spiritual developmental variable, SP +1, we can all figure it out. Could be the scriptures, reading the scriptures, the positive scriptures that affirm identity, a faith-based identity. It's going to church, it's having prayer meetings, it's taking communion as a family as well. That's been also known to help family members heal. So another inspiration for the Joshua Connection. I know some people that the friends of mine here they've watched It's a Wonderful Life, and Zuzu's Petals gave George Bailey hope to continue, that everything was going to be all right after he lost the family business, but it was restored. And so the Joshua petals, Zuzu's petals become Joshua's petals, the hope for a wonderful life. It's been really instrumental in this development. So we're building the petal. Okay, and even though it starts with health and wellness petal, let's just give Joshua Connection a name. The Joshua Connection petals, the flower is called the Joshua Connection petals. And the basic needs of food and shelter, and the petal of health and wellness, and the recovery center petal, the community of faith petal, the career vocation petal, the mentor family petal, the creative arts petal, and the family narrative petal. So these petals, I want to just name this as the, let me just use my arrow here. Okay, I can get this out of the way. I can't believe this is going on, but we'll wing it. All right, so the basic needs petal is for food, shelter, and Food and shelter. I'm going to get back to that laser pointer. Food, shelter, housing, and the need for a safe environment. Obviously, we all need that, right? Health and wellness petal is the biomedical wellness and complementary alternative medicine based on the TCM time clock to measure sleep hygiene and also other parts of, taking care of oneself. And the NADA protocol to manage stress that can contribute to chronic pain and disease over time. And also the recovery pedal process, recovery center pedal is for the 12-step process. It usually helps with families that are constantly, having substance misuse issues and also mental health and wellness issues. But, working with this will get them to another place. Then the community of faith pedals, the chaplain support for the family in aiding in spiritual wellness. And then the career and vocational pedal will help with the economical wellness. And if a family is more prone to business, let's find out what that is and encourage them to write a business plan. Then the mentor family pedal, the sociological wellness. It's all about forming the right relationships and the right circle of support. And then the creative arts pedal is more like, it's also further aids in spiritual development and mental wellness pedal, because you can really cover some content to pray about, to journal about, and to help rewrite the family narrative, one family at a time. And that's usually facilitated by this person right here, the family narrative coach, as it helps again with social wellness, mental health wellness, and spiritual wellness. All right, interventions to building the Joshua Pedal Part A. We talked briefly about it, the NADA protocol, through the efforts of an integrative healthcare specialist that works with the family. The NADA protocol, built upon the foundation of ear acupuncture, teaches the family to properly and safely apply vicarious seeds full of energy, potential energy, and magnets on the ears of each family member in order to provide self-care in the management of stress. Evidence-based research also suggests that through MRI studies of this intervention has facilitated the rewiring of the neurological system of the brains of those who have been affected by toxic stress and trauma over time. This technique can be used as an adjunct to the 4 pillars of Chinese medicine described below. I was trying to remember that one of the researchers that was part of medical acupuncture, I believe it was Vitaly Napadal, yeah. And then there are 4 pillars of Chinese medicine that the ear acupuncture is part of. Obviously, it's acupuncture therapy, but the vicarious seeds is a herb. So Chinese herbal medicine and dietary therapy will help these families. The medical massage and manipulation therapy in Tuina, and that's used in Tuina, that's described in Tuina. And then exercise and movement therapy. It could be walking, I didn't put that in here, couldn't fit, but medical Qi Gong and Tai Chi. And over here towards my right, it's my husband's ear, but this is the real ear. One of the points is wrong, but on this ear, it's not wrong. The sympathetic nervous system helps modulate the nervous system, Shen Man. It's good for relaxation and sleep. Kidney, liver, and lung. Those are the primary points. And if somebody's needlephobic, the ear seeds and the magnets are what we would encourage families to do. It's actually the self-care part for the family, and you have to be a practitioner that's licensed in acupuncturist to do the needles. All right, so interventions to building the pedal, part 1B. TCM sleep hygiene intervention. The TCM practitioner teaches family how to monitor the circadian rhythm via the TCM time clock. We will be going into that. And also there's Fitbit devices too that we will encourage the family to, we can even help fund the family for this. And then the growth scale intervention to follow, like I said earlier, the Joshua Connection Family Growth Index to see what needs to happen at the, and see what didn't happen, see what we can do to better it. And then, obviously, referring families through the chaplain to food outreaches that are primarily at the churches. All right, so developing a community of faith pedal. Again, we have the intervention, the chaplain, the pastoral counseling intervention, which will bring in prayer to help the family talk it out and pray it out, and to really grow spiritually. Okay, so we have the creative arts pedal. I talked about that earlier. It's all so we can help help the family rewrite their family narrative the positive parts. I mean, you know, they want to just don't emphasize the negative, but eliminate the negative and accentuate the positive. Okay, so here it is, the Joshua Connection Family Flow Growth Index Scale. The other assessment tool of the Joshua Connection. You know, there's A is crisis trauma intake. This is at the psychosocial development sector. We want to find out what's going on with them. What problems do they have? And then we also bring in a set of interventions. And in the psycho-spiritual developmental sector, that's the SP+1. This is more the faith-based and integrative medicine together. We will bring in the NADA protocol, the TCM organ time clock to keep up with what's going on with the body. It's another measure that the family can use to find out how they're doing. And we will always have the family narrative coach come in through Zoom, through telehealth, to check in on them. And also there's a prayer mindfulness part too. And then of course we're doing constant evaluation to find out how the family's doing, and again through Zoom calling and just being there through the family narrative coach. Then Plan D, here it is. Here she is, a family narrative coach, the rewriting of the family narrative, and it all leads towards family harmony. And these +1, +1, +1, +1. We want to give the family that masters all these areas a 3. Okay, a 3. That's what we're looking for. All right, so we're nearing the end of this presentation, and we're looking, this is obviously a replica of the brain, the best way it can be, and the biological time clock is right near the hypothalamus. It is it really regulates the circadian rhythm of the brain. But this is where the Chinese organ time clock, and I misspelled that, but we will change it. This is where it will be very, very helpful for the family. Okay, and here it is. I do have an audio there, but I don't think that it's a 2-minute audio, but I'm not going to chance it because I want to just give my accolades and to the team here to help me get this going. Okay, so again, if we don't have a plan, there's going to be an imbalance of the family. And what we want to do is bring the family from trauma back to balance, building back families one family at a time. So the summary of the Joshua Connection, what we hoped that you got from this presentation is that the Joshua Connection is an innovative concept for a novel faith-based set of multimodal interventions, like I mentioned earlier, that has a propensity to support African American families and other disparaged families who have experienced trauma and continue to do so. The personality theories that support the Joshua Connection are based on the psychosocial, spiritual, and moral development of family systems in the context of intergenerational racism and trauma over time. Probably 400 years, right? Then utilizing a multidimensional self-care intervention model, the Joshua Connection's primary goal would be to focus on 1, issues concerning safety, mental health, biophysical, social, and spiritual health. I hope that was clear. And then the interventions of self-care, which will include, but not be limited to, the 4 pillars of TCM, the NADA protocol, medical Qi Gong, Tai Chi, and the TCM time clock to address and support sleep hygiene and other mind-body exercises. The other self-care interventions will come from faith leaders within the communities of faith. For example, pastoral counseling, prayer, reflection, and journaling, which support the spiritual needs of the families in need. And then the creative arts expression, recreation, and respite. And rewriting the family narrative will be assisted by a family narrative coach. Also, comedy. A lot of people love comedy in my family. We do this. We try to have comedy night and game night. It's awesome. Limitations of the Joshua Connection. Unfortunately, there is known literature. There is known literature already out there for focused interventions for families with some aspect of trauma. But there is limited research providing the kind of multidimensional support as envisioned in the Joshua Connection. We hope to change that. 2, in meeting the bigger picture for the needs of many African American and disparaged families that lack the initial funds in order to access self-care, the question still remains, how can participating families be funded? And 3, where can the Joshua Connection be implemented? And 4, what communities of faith could benefit from the set of interventions offered by the Joshua Connection? And the 7 strengths of the Joshua Connection, we already talked about it. encompasses a pragmatic approach to trauma intervention in its application that embodies the wisdom of traditional and modern knowledge, encompasses a more of a holistic bio-psychosocial model in a change in society, clears internal noise and facilitates mindfulness by using TSAM and the NADA protocol. We talked about that. Provides a strong foundation for the successful integration of other interventions within the Joshua Connection. Helps families process and gain a greater sense of identity, who they are. That is based on healing, health, and wellness. And is also adaptable, this is the biggie here, to any faith-based group and other ecumenical groups in need of the interventions listed. And it's cost-effective in its funding. I hope to be doing some crowdfunding too. So the future potential for the Joshua Connection: conducting pilot studies in communities of vulnerable families. 2, look into faith-based institutions, ministries, and or establish community clinics for support and implementation of the Joshua Connection. 3, serving families who have the greatest need for the utilization of self-care services in an established acupuncture practice via mobile clinic, van unit, and or telehealth visit. And I'm kind of thinking about creating an app that could actually also help these families. And then promoting idea collaborators with other healthcare and faith stakeholders, like I just mentioned, the app. All right, so there it is. And I just wanted to get to this. I want to get to my acknowledgments. Joshua and I want to thank you and bless all the families here and all the families who will benefit from the Joshua Connection, especially the people called to come alongside of them that will stand with them in their hour of need. Thank you for your patience, Libby, Dan, Pam, and Catherine, for giving me the opportunity to develop my skills further, and talent for believing in my potential in one of the most rigorous research programs that I have ever encountered in my educational career. It was more rigorous than my doctorate. And thank you, Laura, for coming alongside of me as my number one mentor and friend in many ways, as we embrace another way of life for every family that comes along our way. Going forward, let us keep the flame burning brightly, let the fire be burned brightly. So there it is, and I think I'm done. And this is Joshua. Joshua wants to say hi, and there he is with all his activities. And there you go, end of slide. Okay.
Hooray, 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 hooray. You can stop sharing.
Yep. Okay. Wow.
Thank you very much, Shirley. I think we could all unmute and give Shirley a bit of an applause for her work.
Yes.
Yay. Thank you.
Great job, Shirley.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Laura, did you want to say something? Your hands are up. Laura, I just.
Oh, I was,
You're giving the hallelujahs.
the deaf culture waves their hands.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we're on Zoom and only so much sound comes through.
Yeah.
But
Laura, did you want to say anything? How did you think I did?
yeah, I thought you did really great. And I don't know. So I just wrote down, it's designed to build on strength, and it really focuses on connection and restoring for people who are really, really vulnerable in a lot of different ways. And I don't know another program model like it, really. And I am responsible for writing up for our organization program models being used, right? So really,
you got me. We can do it together, and wherever else this goes.
right?
Yeah. Anybody else?
So traditionally, we ask, are there any questions or comments, reactions?
Well,
Yes, just please.
No one else was speaking. I really congratulate you, Shirley, for developing a whole new system. And I'm just thinking of the last couple of slides where, are you going to be able to maybe set up a form, like an instrument, like a survey instrument, to translate the patients that you see and their situation into the structure of the Joshua Connection, so you can begin to get data if you collect it in a way that you can add the observations of one patient to another and another. That you put something in there about pilot data.
Yes, I did.
That would be, to me, the next step of pilot data, which is to organize your treatment system and the data you capture and the outcomes you capture
Mhm.
according to the Joshua connection, and then develop pilot data to see what happens.
Exactly. That is that's definitely in the cards in the foreseeable immediate future. I'm working with my friend Angela, another acupuncturist who graduated from NISA. She's here somewhere. I just saw her name. But we are doing some consultant work with Unified Family in Brockton, and they cater to the African American and Haitian American and Cape Verdeans, all of these people, and I'll be introducing them to you, Laura, very shortly. But that's where we're going to go with this, and it's going to also be some mobile outreach too, in collecting data like that. So thank you very much, Dr. Carr, for confirming that.
Thank you, Shirley, and thanks Libby as well, and also Katie. I at the beginning saw that how many hours there were of time that were put in. It was just impressive.
Yes, yes. Katie really, really was there to help me understand and like research. I had to, I have to confess, Dr. Carr, that I love research, but it was like I'm a creative writer, so I was always like, I want to just write about narrative. I want to just do narrative, but I know I have to also get data. So, and look at what's biased and what's not. And in the acupuncture world, they're working on that. This is pragmatic. This is going to be a pragmatic research for sure. Katie.
Well, Shirley, I just love how you really look at the root of it. You're really using your clinical lens to kind of see, why is this happening at this deep level? And especially, I love how you talk about the child development, because that really is so fundamental to how we see the world and how we view our relationships. And so to kind of understand that this comes at this really deep level and building that relationship within the family, I just think it's so beautiful and so under recognized in our society. And I think you're fundamentally starting from a place that just really could use that deep healing. And I commend you for looking at it in that way, because it's so crucial. So
thank you.
Nicely done. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I went with that vision that I said I had earlier. Let my need be let my greatest need be the need to help others. At one point, our family was very needy, but then we had to get out of that slump and see, where everybody else has that commonality, that camaraderie.
I also think that starting with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it made me understand as I worked with Shirley and we worked together and she developed this, thinking about acupuncture and mindfulness is sort of the issues around safety, right? That is really fundamental to this idea of fundamental needs before you can do other things. And it seemed like the kinds of interventions that NADA has, from the NADA protocol and the mindfulness and prayer, that it really reached to these kind of more deeper levels. And so and while I don't really understand the time clock, poor Shirley, I really
I wanted to hit that audio because it talked about it in 2 minutes, but I was saying to myself, well, you did caution me, Libby, so I had to be true to the time. Yeah.
Shirley, you did a great job, and what I really liked also is how you framed it with those petals. And I think that's a very visual but understandable way for people to really see the connectedness that you were going for, but these very distinct petals. So great job. I'm looking forward to seeing next steps.
Thank you. And now I can talk about Zuzu's petals. So during that time when Joshua was little and was in need of all these services and Christmas time and being a single parent at the time, I would always lament because I didn't have money. That I knew what my kids needed and what they wanted, but I just didn't have the job or the money. I had a job, but it didn't pay enough, just the bills. And so I would watch It's a Wonderful Life to try to get some kind of clarity as to where the priorities were. And I always, when George Bailey, who was played by Jimmy Stewart, was saying, "I wish I was never born." I had gotten to that point before, and but I wasn't suicidal. I just would think it, and then I would unthink it. But Clarence came in, the angel who was his guardian angel, and gave him that wish for a couple minutes. It seemed like eternity in the movie. But then the last thing before he said that, he stormed out of the house because Zuzu, who's the piano player of the family, who was his, I think, oldest girl, she said, "Oh, Daddy, I picked flowers for you." And he goes, "Oh, thank you, Zuzu." But he was thinking about the money that he lost in his father's business. And so he put that in his pocket. And so when he finally came to his senses, he's like, "All right, in my back?" And he goes, "Let me, Zuzu's pedals." And he took Zuzu's pedals out of his pocket. And then I heard this, I had this idea in the Joshua connection. Joshua's pedals are, Zuzu's pedals are Joshua's pedals. So there's the story of the pedals.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful. And so I would encourage you kind of to use that visual as you take this presentation to people who don't know really about the Joshua connection. It makes a really nice presentation. Good job.
Well, thank you. And thank everybody for being here and having patience with me. Yeah.
We're delighted for you, Shirley.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you. Angela, my friend, do you have anything to say? Am I putting you on a spot?
No, I actually hoping you didn't wrap up. I was just talking to my son, but
Yeah.
I thank you for this, Shirley. I don't know about anyone else, but to me, this changes the way medicine is practiced. In other words, a holistic approach for the Black community, for African Americans, and being able to give them something other than medicine in terms of drugs, but looking at the whole person and saying, okay, here's your physical body, but you also have there's the mental, there's the spiritual. And now we're just beginning to understand that we have to approach healing more holistically in this country. So what you're doing is I really want to see it manifest as an acupuncturist, as an African-American acupuncturist. I can't wait to see this manifest. I can't wait to develop the research that will show people that this could be a model, not only for the African-American community, but for any healing system that takes the approach of holism. Look at the person, look at the trauma, but not just the trauma.
Don't be afraid of the trauma either. Don't be
afraid. Right.
You're looking at
the whole person to heal whatever needs to be healed. And one thing I can say about Chinese medicine, this is a plug for us acupuncturists, is that it does look at the root. We're not looking just at the surface of why someone is the way they are or they're in pain. There's a root cause for this. And sometimes it's not just in the body. Yeah. It's in the mind that, you're introducing people to other practices that they can do to heal themselves and the family. Yeah. So thank you for this presentation. I really appreciate it. You're giving acupuncturists a legitimate plug. The NADA program, the research shows the NADA system is wonderful. Chinese medicine is wonderful. And it will be a great way to integrate into the medical system here that we already have. So you're going to show us that integration is possible. Integrative medicine is possible, and it can work for families, whether trauma or not. So Thank you, and I appreciated hearing your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, and you're going to be part of that too.
Thank you.
So it's not going to be just
you're trying to get me into things. I'm busy enough
by myself.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. It was a wonderful program to see her in.
Thank you.
Great.
I don't know if you remember this, Dr. Carr, but Angela remember. I think we were in the same class when you were you were giving a talk to the NISA students about the program, and I came up to you and I said, I had this thing, this desire to really come into the program and look at trauma and the pain of trauma and the effect it has on the families. But I didn't know where to go with this. I was already sitting on the Joshua Connection. It was stewing and it was simmering on the stove. But I had no idea that the two worlds were going to come together the way that it did.
I remember we used to come over once or twice a year and give some lectures, and we used to talk about the program. Katie, I think you participated in some of them, actually.
Mhm.
And of course, Libby. But I remember you coming up after kind of one of the content classes, kind of the overview of the pain system classes with the early germs, or I shouldn't say that, the early embryos of this idea. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So here we are.
Laura, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else. You did work with Shirley a long time, and we really appreciate your mentoring her. And we had a long time in the fall where we worked together, and it was such an extraordinary pleasure to get to know you. But I wanted to thank you and acknowledge all your support for Shirley and my pleasure in working with you.
Thank you so much, Libby. I learned a lot through our little meetings, to tell you the truth. And it was really, really impressive to see how long and hard Shirley worked at like gathering all these little tentacles. And it is truly a good model. And just the last time we talked 2 days ago, I showed her some before and after self-portraits by a child with ADD and astigmas and Down syndrome, before they put the magnet on her ear and after. Her self-portrait is really stunning. So we talked about doing series of self-portraits with the children, about the family over time, pre and post, and that how that could be a record and actually even displayed in a community of faith, in a church, things like that, that the families could show how they were growing, and that could be a way of showing progress. And actually, I developed a faith and spirituality measure myself about acupuncture some years ago when George Bush was elected. His first press conference, Ari Fleischer said that the president had every confidence in faith-based initiatives. And I said, well, I'm going to prove acupuncture enhances faith and spirituality. So I studied the instruments and I really didn't like any of them. And I developed my own because of the things that I've seen I do a lot of group work, trauma work after disaster, and with mentally unstable folks, often chronically unstable. And I know what I see and what people experience, what they report. When you create a safe environment for people to actually express themselves, they slow down. I've just seen really amazing things happen, and none of the instruments I saw would begin to capture what I saw. So I realized 2 days ago, oh geez, I never even talked to Shirley about my instrument, which of course isn't validated, but I did do some focus groups.
Mhm.
And I did do about 6 surveys that yielded really some pretty interesting results. And so I can't wait to talk with Shirley about
Developing surveys that
thinking about, because what I was led to was a way to do that research that actually strengthened the person when you did the research. Like the way that you perform it, the way you ask the questions, the progression of how you approach it actually brings strength to the people. So, I'm just so impressed that it's really building units of strength. And if it can be within a community of faith, you're going to be building this like honeycomb structure of more functional units that can support each other and help teach each other.
Yeah.
We learn by seeing other people do it and transform. And that gives us the faith to keep pressing on when there's a lot of reasons not to.
Exactly. And Libby, her nickname is Libby. I keep calling her Libby. Laura, but her nickname is Libby as well. But Libby's real name is Libby. But what I was going to say was Laura had, some time ago, a couple of years back, when I had taken the NADA protocol, I believe it was in 2017, when I first got certified. And I was asking her about I don't know what to do with the capstone. I got to get this capstone in my head. And she goes, well, why don't you start, get connected with some African-American churches? See, we Catholics, so we're very ecumenical. We go all over the place too. And so I just hadn't had enough time to look at this. But I noticed that Liz Walker, who's a pastor, who was anchor for Channel 4, WBZ, has her own church, and she's doing something with in trauma with Dr. Hamilton or something. Does that ring a bell?
Gloria
Hammond. Yeah, Dr. Gloria Hammond. And I sat in on, they didn't know I was there, but I sat in on some of their presentation, and they're working with prisoners, African-American men in prison and their families coming, adjusting to civilian life when they come out and assimilate and things like that. So it's there, but we just have to access it.
Well, Shirley, I think you've done a fabulous job, and I love this thing that Laura did. We applaud you, and you're gonna bring it forward. Good, excellent work.
Thank you for coming to the Joshua Connection. And if you want to know more about the Joshua Connection, you can always contact Dr. Shirley Canniff at facebook.com/Dr. Shirl, Wstk-Itv.